So, now please join me in welcoming the writers and directors of Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, and Daniel's mom, Becky Scheinert.
Well, good evening, and I'm glad to see all of you here. And you're just going to have to put up with my southern accent. There's a reason. I'm from Alabama. Sorry, I'm a war eagle. I heard that. So I hope how many of y'all, this is the first time you've seen the movie?
Wow. Thank you for coming, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, yes. That is great. More new converts.
This guy has seen it before. I see you got the A24 shirt. How many times?
4, 5.
Okay, that's
4 or
amazing.
5 times.
Thank you
Whoa.
so much.
That's a lot. Well, I hope it met and exceeded your expectations. And this is a BOGO tonight because you have buy one, get one. You're familiar with this? You get not only 2 directors, but you get the 2 screenwriters at the same time. So, so to start off, why don't you talk a little bit about the screenwriting side of it, the genesis of the whole idea back in 2016?
That's right. We started out in music videos in like 2009. We made our first music video, and we would a lot of times write with like we would chase after a weird image that we thought a band might enjoy that could go viral, and that's still such a big part of our writing process now. Is early on it'll be a kind of images and gags and just kind of bits that we think might become a good flag to plant in the ground. So in 2016, it started with kind of a riff on the Matrix. Just what if there was a multiversal power to tap into other lives you've led, and you could use that to do funny fight scenes, and it could be like Kung Fu Hustle, but so it wouldn't be totally serious. And Dan and I were pitching gags back and forth. Like the very first one was, what if Trinity from the Matrix is running away from the police, and she runs up to a kid, steals its ice cream, barfs onto the ice cream on purpose, and then gives it back to the kid, and then gets superpowers and flies away. So it'd be like the stupid Matrix.
What a great opening! Yeah, that was amazing.
But this back then it was like a short film. I didn't think it sounded like a good movie yet.
But usually what happens is it's a very selfish, fun seed that then gets paired with something else. Usually what happens is we're talking about it and coming up with the problems of it. And in this case, like Scheinert was talking about how much he hates multiverse stories, because multiverse stories immediately, the moment you open up all the possibilities, the narrative no longer matters because every option gets washed away and kind of it kind of falls apart.
I specifically don't like a sci-fi film that doesn't acknowledge the philosophical repercussions of its premise. Right. So like a time travel movie where no one has any existential problems, like I don't relate. Like if time travel or if aliens show up and no one questions if God exists, that's what I would feel if aliens showed up. That I check out. So we started talking about what if we leaned into that? What if the movie was about how the multiverse makes us feel? What if the whole movie went there?
And so it was like this dumb Matrix idea mixed with this idea of making a multiverse movie where we go to too many multiverses, where we are overwhelming the character, overwhelming the story, overwhelming the audience. Can we make that and still make it work? I think it's very easy to imagine a version of that movie just falling apart, which is, I think, in the writing process, we wrote many versions of this script that did fall apart. It was like a lot of bad drafts to get to something that was actually working. So yeah, that's...
So this is the spaghetti on the refrigerator door routine? Is this?
Y'all know this? You throw spaghetti, see what sticks? Yeah. It's a perfect metaphor because there was literally a universe with talking spaghetti that didn't stick. We that's on the Blu-ray, but we cut it out. It just no one in the test audiences liked Spaghetti Baby Noodle Boy, but that's the universe where Michel Yeoh is a mama spaghetti and her little sad baby is a piece of macaroni that's confused why he doesn't look like all the other spaghetti in the pot.
and it's throwing day, and every day on throwing day, a hand comes out and picks up the spaghetti that's ready, and if you get thrown against the wall and you stick, you get a name and you become a man. So,
Yeah. And she's like, "You're never gonna stick. You don't look like the other spaghetti. Your life is a lie." You know.
it sounds like we're just making this up, but
This
it's
is
on
real.
It's
This
on the
is-
Blu-ray. It doesn't work at all.
We did it practically. We built puppets.
doesn't
Jason
work,
Hamer
yeah.
built these incredible puppets.
Yeah.
One of the guys on set, his name's Queso, and he was like running the DIT station. He was like, "This is my favorite day on set I've ever been on. I've been working in this industry for 15 years, and it got cut." I'm sorry, Queso.
Well, there are a lot of people here, and I know they've got a lot of questions. So raise a hand if you have a question for these guys. Okay, right here.
Or for my mom. You're allowed to ask my mom questions too. Yeah.
Do you guys have a background in improv, or where does the comedic stylings dwell from a couple of VFX nerd heads?
Thank you. Yeah.
Teed that up right well. I don't have to pay you afterward, do I?
Yeah. When we met, we were both in college, and I was neglecting my studies in favor of my comedy troupe, and I was the video guy. So I would make YouTube videos constantly, and we would do sketches and write plays and do improv shows. And then Kwan was like,
I was the VFX nerd. I was the design guy. I was basically teaching everyone at my school After Effects. Like, even some of the teachers would come and learn from me. And so that was kind of like we came from polar opposite ends of filmmaking. Like, animation and VFX is all about planning and knowing and having control of everything, whereas improv obviously is filmmaking where you have no control. And I think that's why our stuff has this very strange feeling of being of like controlled chaos, right? It feels chaotic and bizarre and unhinged, but at the same time you can feel his hand guiding the audience through the story.
that being said, that's sort of a reductive way that we can describe each other. And Kwan did tons of summer camps as a kid and was like in like pop punk bands and like has like a really good sense of humor. Like he can really like feel the energy. And like when I found that out, that like he wasn't just the computer nerd, that was when I started really asking him to work more on my projects. And I
will
also
say,
loved animation.
Swollen Monkey Showcase, that's his improv team.
Yeah, we didn't come up with the name. It predated me, and I auditioned, and we changed the name to
But
Swomo.
if you are an improv nut, that team was incredible. You would go watch them, and they were doing like layers upon layers of jokes. Like it was more about like making fun of improv than actual improv. And like I remember the first time I went and saw them perform, I was like, is this written? I can't tell. It felt so tight. I thought it was all written sketches. Really impressive stuff.
And Sunitha is an actress, Sunitha Mani, who has the hot dog fingers in the movie musical.
She's also in the Turn Down for What video. Yeah.
And she's also in Spirited on Apple TV and on Glow on Netflix. But she was in the same troupe as me. She's like an old friend from college. We would do comedy together.
And in subtext there is, this was not love at first sight when these two guys met each other, okay? This was not like, oh, we're going to do some great work together.
Yeah, I didn't like Dan at first. Yeah, he was too quiet in class. In film school, some kids I felt like they were wasting their parents' money. You know,
and this kid talked too much in school. Like he just every time the teacher asked a question, he'd be the first one to answer. So,
yeah,
you know.
And if the teacher made a mistake, I'd tell him.
Exactly.
You know,
That
I was
kid,
that asshole.
That kid.
All right, another question. Lady over here.
Hi. First of all, I love the film, of course. It's the second time I'm seeing it. And I wanted to ask, in the perspective of the screenwriting, since the movie has so much subplots for all the characters, how did you manage to keep up and track with that, or how did you structure it? How do you have it to write the script about that?
Yeah. I think one easy way to answer is actually to go back to Interesting Ball. So you mentioned you were a fan since Interesting Ball. For those who don't know, it's just this weird short film that we did, and I can't believe people watched it. But it was after a year of doing commercials and just making stuff that was like really soul-sucking. We decided to make something that no one would say yes to, and so
It's literally a short film where we took the ideas that had been rejected by bands, and we borrowed some friends' ideas that were all their
So everything within it is rejected ideas.
Like one of the short films in the movie was a Skrillex music video that got rejected, and we wove them all together. Yeah.
But it was a real fun experiment because we knew finally we weren't beholden to an agency or to a brand. We decided to really experiment by writing 5 different short films, shooting them completely separate from each other, and then figuring out how to make it all work in the edit. And so it was this complete experiment and montage. It took us like a year of editing on and off, just kind of coming back to it every now and then, trying to figure it out. But we learned so much about how much we could really take like ideas that probably shouldn't stick together and make them feel like one big movement. And so while writing this script, we kind of foolishly felt a little too confident in our abilities, and so we're like, okay, let's have like 30 subplots. How many can we jam into one movie? How can we make sure that it's all going to make sense in the end? And it was really important for us that each of them actually had their own conclusion, because it felt like the thesis of the film is just staring at chaos, staring at the noise, and then finding a way to show you that all, because when you look at the chaos and the noise, it just like Michel Yeoh's character, you kind of say, oh, nothing matters, and that's kind of heartbreaking and awful way to react to life. And so by the end of the film, we want to kind of show the opposite, which is like everything can matter, anything can matter. And so it was really important for us to have all those through lines kind of follow through. And I think part of it was we didn't know how it was going to cut together, and then the other part of it was some of the stuff that didn't work we cut out, and so there's the illusion that it all worked, but no, really, like a lot of stuff ended up dying.
Kwan loves like callbacks and for everything to come
Yeah.
full circle to a fault where I'm like, not everything has to show back up at the end. Like while we were filming the movie, he really, really wanted the pig that comes out of the elevator to have a scene at the end. But like hiring a pig trainer is a very big thing, and like it really slows down the shoot. You want like the pig to feel comfortable, and so it was a big ask. But he really wanted the pig to show up next to the bagel at the very end, and just go like, and then the subtitles would say "There is no God," and it would jump in the bagel on purpose. Which would have been a funny bit.
Would have been great.
But it was expensive. It was an expensive idea.
Yeah, some things have to fall to the wayside.
And you're getting what went on the floor. Okay, another question.
Yeah,
Gen-
I think you've sort of addressed all of this just now, but is it ridiculous to be seeking a sort of a philosophical underpinning to this movie when we say nothing matters, and in the end, it's the mother's love who brings the daughter back? Is there a philosophical underpinning to this movie?
Thank you. I was just getting self-conscious. We were making too many jokes, and there is, like the movie means a lot to us, and we kind of discovered it as we went. I think the project at the beginning was, like we said, can we make a movie that goes to too many universes and meaning breaks down, and then the question was, can we pull the audience back from that and give them something to care about, and can we do that for ourselves? So 5 years ago, we were feeling pretty bleak when we started writing, and so we were like, what if we wrote a movie that cheered ourselves up? Can we figure out something that would give us hope in all this noise? And we did some reading. We found some quotes that kind of became our things that we held on to.
Right. Yeah, you can call it absurdism, you can call it optimistic nihilism, but it's just this idea that in the absence of inherent meaning, we can be empowered to create our own meaning, and how beautiful that can be and how necessary that is right now, I think, because I think so much of the collective meaning structures that we have been holding on to for so long are falling apart in a lot of different ways, and so we have to find a way to collectively recreate that right now. I think there is definitely like a meaning crisis right now because of what the internet has kind of done to the conversation.
There's a quote that Dan found that was published in this magazine called Playboy Magazine, and the paraphrased version of the quote is that the scariest thing isn't that the universe is hostile, it's that the universe is apathetic,
It's indifferent.
indifferent, and that. But in the face of that indifference, if we can shine some light, even the smallest light, that gives our life meaning. Something like that, and it's Stanley Kubrick, and we were like, "Ooh, this is a good one," and we kind of held on to that.
Right. Specifically, that the notion that the universe is not hostile, is indifferent. I felt like that was a really important thing for us to kind of put in this film. There is no bad guy. The bad guy is existence, you know. And I think that is kind of why we decided to make this an action movie without a villain, really. You know, in the end, you realize there is no villain. It is all about, it's all about perspective.
Rumor has it that you've been accused of using your mothers in this film. So, you want to share a little bit on that front?
Yeah, I love my mom. She's lovely. She cares a lot about taxes and accounting. And so she laughed at all the accounting jokes when she saw the movie for the first time. This is true. A lot of times we like to say like the women in our lives inspired it, because a lot of times I see parts of my mom, but also parts of her sisters in this movie, because she has very weird, memorable sisters, my aunts. And then
But also, you know, our partners, our sisters, just the people around us. For the most part, we have very interesting, strong women in our lives, and so this film was actually really. It was a funny thing because originally Michelle Yeoh was going to play the Waymond character. It was actually gender swapped, so there was going to be Michelle Yeoh as Waymond and Jackie Chan as the main character. And the moment we swapped it, the whole script just came alive, because it was so much easier to write to my mom, to your mom. Like my mom is this person, this crazy, very opinionated, very caring person who cares a little too much, you know. And is so distracted by all the things that she cares about that she can't actually care about the things that really matter. And I felt like that was such a beautiful and interesting person to throw into the multiverse. And so, yeah, I do think that something about writing towards our mothers with this film unlocked it and made it infinitely better.
and especially like writing an action film, I think we were just kind of feeling like we were writing a riff on a movie we'd seen before. And then when we started talking about our moms and made it that story, it was something that was like, oh, this is a movie I actually want to make. I haven't seen this yet. And June Kwan, his mom, really does show her love by criticizing. And so when she told me I needed to grow more hair, I was genuinely touched. And so we put it in the movie.
It's actually worth also noting that a big part of the inspiration of Jobu Tupaki and the relationship between Evelyn and Jobu stems from the fact that we are filmmakers who make insane stuff. We made Swiss Army Man, which is the farting corpse movie. We made Turn Down for What, which was like it's a music video for Lil Jon
with dancing dicks and boobs.
Where I smash things with my dick, and so like it's like
that's a weird thing to do with your school tuition.
Exactly.
You know?
So,
make that.
I remember my dad sent me an email that said I showed my coworkers Turn Down for What, and they kind of looked at me and said, "Aren't you embarrassed? Like, shouldn't you?" And so this is Jobu Tupaki is an expression that is so embarrassing and so terrifying to the mother and to the parents, and we just thought like, okay, this is fun. We are the villains of our own movie, trying to understand our parents' perspective, and that was like a really fun challenge. I think just again kept us on our toes and made this film something that like we hadn't seen before. So yeah.
All right, there was another question right over here, I believe. This gentleman.
Well, I guess we started talking about it, but I was wondering, like, besides just the general philosophy themes, like why you chose the medium of this family with like generational trauma, because like for me the movie is so powerful because I'm like the child of Chinese immigrants and they had a very rough upbringing. I'm also bi and not out to my parents, so it's like really specific to me. Like super. My last name is Wang. So
oh my God. What's your first name? You don't have to say. You can say you're not.
But like there are scenes in the movie where like I can like replay like in my head with my experiences. So I was just wondering if you could talk a bit more about like why you chose like this specific family and like this specific story, because it meant a lot to me.
Thank you, Mr. Wing. This is it's very interesting. Our process is backwards. Oftentimes people talk about starting with the characters and then finding everything else, and we're the opposite. We start with a structure and we have to find our characters, and oftentimes it takes us, until the very last draft to really figure out, oh, this is what we've been chasing. Because I feel like there are some filmmakers like Christopher Nolan does the same thing. He's very much a structure guy, and then he figures out what kind of mice to put through the maze or whatever. And so with this one, the first step was, okay, this is going to be about the generation gap between our parents and us, because we grew up on the internet and they didn't, and that felt like really worth exploring through the multiverse.
And in the first draft, it wasn't even a family; it was just a generation gap. There was a young
Right,
villain
yeah.
and an older protagonist,
Right.
and then it just started to feel like it needed to be a family. And
Right.
and then we were like, okay, well, some of them are related, but some of these other characters aren't going to be part of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And then like there was a different kind of Morpheus type character, and every draft it just kept being like, it's got to be this family, and we kind of started stealing stories from personal life, but also our friends about like what are the conversations that are the hardest to have, what are the communication breakdowns. And so it became about the immigrant experience, about queerness, about like family, and then even the grandfather character would kind of come and go in different drafts. And it was like, no, it's got to be about each generation, so it's not just this one gap, and you get to see that the protagonist went through the same version of what she's putting her daughter through, and it took time, yeah.
And then one of the other big like structural things I was excited about was trying to find a way to make a movie that was so big and so cosmic, and yet have moments that are so small and so subtle, and see if we can kind of show that both those things kind of can coexist, that they're both equally important. And so there was something specific about the way that immigrant parents or Asian immigrant parents react to queerness that felt so small and so invisible but so heartbreaking, that it just felt so perfect for this script in particular. And it's kind of subtly hinted at in the film, but like the fact that the daughter comes out and then Evelyn doesn't have anything to say, and kind of,
Or it's implied that she's already come out so many times.
Right, exactly.
That it's like, this is a years-long conversation.
right, because I think oftentimes with immigrant families there is no blow up. There's no get out of my house, don't talk to me. It's a slow motion erasure that happens because they would rather just ignore it and hope that it'll go away. And I felt like that was such a small story that I hadn't seen before, and putting that up against, again, this big cosmic story felt really special and important. And I'm so glad that you connected with it, because we were really nervous. It's such a specific story, and I'm glad that people like you are able to see themselves in it.
One of the things, people always say you can pick your friends, but you don't get to pick your family. So that's an automatic pressure cooker for any conflict that you have. But it's also the basis of the poignancy and the tightness of a family and the love that's in there. So, sir? Right.
I know that I saw it in the theaters and I came out twice.
Thank you.
It's just, I saw an interview where you were talking about how the pandemic kind of messed up your business plan as far as release and all. I'm just curious, how did it go and how has it gone? I still see it in theaters, and my follow-up question I'll ask now is, what's next?
Thank you. Yeah. We shot this movie before the pandemic. So it was kind of January, February, March of 2020. And we were feeling great. And we were like, oh, man, we'll just edit this in 6 months, release it this fall. Production got shut down with one more shoot day left. And then we kind of went into the pandemic, and it couldn't have gone better. We feel so lucky. Like I felt on a personal level very lucky to be able to work on this project while going through this big, global, scary thing because the movie kind of like had themes that felt resonant, and it was kind of I was so grateful to have that project. But at times we were like, we got to hurry up and put this out there. You know, like people, this story is relevant.
Yeah, we do test screening sometimes just for friends, and oftentimes they'd be like, "You have to release this next week. You got to release it now."
Or they'd be like, "Can I send this to my friend? Like he's really struggling, or I want to send this
Right.
to my mom." But we edited for almost a whole year with our good friend, and there wasn't a rush. And to A24's credit, they didn't rush us, and they believed in it as a theatrical film. So they were kind of like, looks like there's no rush on theatrical film right now, and that gave us time to refine it. You know, I think never did we kind of write or make this movie thinking about like award season, but I think it turned out a lot better because we edited it for that long, and because we sat and did all the visual effects with our friends, and because the composers had a year and a half to do their music. So like almost nothing was rushed in the way that it almost was. And so, yeah, this year's been wild to see audiences like it, to see people watch it in theaters. It never had one big weekend. It was it kind of came out and made like $3 or $4 million on its first big weekend, and we were like, uh-oh, you know, A24 might not make their money back. But to the fans' credits, like people saw it multiple times and told their friends, and it stayed in theaters for like 3 months. And so it was a slow hit, which was really nice, you know, just kind of slowly hear people watching it and liking it. Yeah.
And then what's next? I think we're going through some like weird growing pains. Like this is not how. I was telling someone who was asking me what it felt like, and I was like, it feels like being a bug in the dirt and just like doing your own thing, and then having someone lift up your rock, and you're just like suddenly exposed, and you're scrambling around, and you don't really know how to exist like that. That's what I feel like. I feel like we're gonna, I don't know, we're probably gonna do some embarrassing things in the next couple of years. But I'm excited because it's such a gift to be in this position. How many filmmakers get to have a successful film in theaters? Who you know, we're being told we get to do another one, which is like amazing. How often does that happen? So hopefully we grow into the moment, and we're working on something that's bigger somehow.
Like bigger, messier, more ambitious,
Yeah.
and might take even longer.
And then we're also working on something smaller. So we'll see what comes out first. But thank you so much for your question.
Yeah. Show of hands, who wants a bigger movie than the one you just watched? Okay, a couple people smaller. That's fine if you want smaller. A couple people want small. Okay.
Back up this side. The lady on the end of the aisle there.
Sorry about that. Hi. I guess I had a really specific question at a really specific shot, and I've admittedly watched the movie so many times that every time I see it, it kind of like gives me this really familiar feeling. The first time it happens is when Evelyn has like her sequence of memories, and there's the one where she's sitting in the van with Joy, and then it comes back later on when Joy is talking about like the pain of having you as my mother, and it doesn't really come up, and I just wanted to like every time I see it, it just feels like something so familiar that I've experienced with my mother. And you were talking earlier about like the coming out experience, and it reminds me a lot of that. And I was just wondering if there's any additional context or meaning or what that was to film, because it's something that really sticks out to me every time I see it.
Yeah.
I love this question. That's great. We should just ask people like pick a shot and ask us about it.
It definitely is meant to point to that. That's kind of what I was referencing when I was talking. We were talking to Mr. Wang or Wong. I have a friend who goes Wang, another friend. Yeah, exactly. Okay, yeah. Our producer's name is Jonathan Wong, but spelled Wang. Anyways, that's what it is. It was meant to kind of evoke this moment in my own life where I went away to college, and oftentimes I was like maybe only an hour away, and so oftentimes my mother would actually come and pick me up, and those drives were kind of very fruitful for those kind of conversations where you have an hour with your parents, you're transitioning into adulthood, and just all the bad stuff and the good stuff come out. And so and literally what happened to me was like, you're driving, you're talking, and then you're like, oh, we're gonna pull over and we're gonna finish this conversation. And that's what that is. And I'm really, it's very interesting that you latched onto it. But yeah.
Yeah, also interesting because he never told me that. That's great. But there was more in the script and that we shot where Jobu would described exactly what happened. She's like, I told you this, and you just pulled away. You just drove off and never acknowledged that anything happened. And it's kind of a testament to the actors that when we were editing, we felt like it didn't need the description. And we kind of just pulled back, and we were like, there's something better. You can just feel what they're both feeling without having to say it. And that was always a gift to us as screenwriters when we can overwrite, shoot it, and then underwrite in the edit and be like, never mind, we don't have to say it.
Okay, you want to come over here? This gentleman in the blue shirt.
I love the music so much. I wonder if you could talk about, I've never heard of Sunlux, and just the wide variety of styles. It's so eclectic. And also, who came up with Claire de Lune?
Great, yeah.
Music nut here, I like it.
Yeah, so the cliff notes on Sunlux is it's a trio of guys, and each of them is kind of a incredible multi-instrumentalist. So Ryan Lott started the band, and he has the most composing experience. And then Rafiq Bhatia is a guitarist, mostly.
Kind of a virtuoso, honestly. He's an incredible guitarist.
Yeah, and then Ian Chang specializes in the drums, but each of them has done solo records in addition to their music. They're kind of like a musician's band. They're very like nerdy, incredible, like...
Right, people within the industry know them, but no one else outside of them.
And they'll sometimes get hired to come on and do like collaborations with larger artists, like Moses Sumney went on tour with Ian for a while. He's like a great musician that contributed to the soundtrack.
But like we come from music videos, as he mentioned before, and so music is a huge part of inspiration. It's actually very funny to be here because the Hammer Museum puts on a music video screening every few months called the Flux Screening Series, and I think this is like the first screen we ever watched one of our music videos on the big screen. It's kind of cool to be back in this room.
And later that night we did a dance routine.
Exactly, very fun
in
night.
penguin suits.
Yeah.
Pigeon suits, yeah.
But while we're writing, I like to start a playlist, and however long it takes to write the script, the playlist usually gets pretty long. And this playlist got to be about 14 hours long, I think. And as I was adding stuff to it, Sunlux kept popping up, and I was like, you know what, maybe we should look into this. And we reached out to them, and I think what's so wonderful about them and their process is that when we first talked to them, they said, we're weird musicians. We, normally when you're designing something, they use this as a metaphor. An architect usually builds a house and designs a house, and then finds the right, and then someone finds the right chair to put into that house. They like to do it the opposite. They like to find a weird chair that like they've never seen before and decide like, okay, what house would I design around this chair? Which was so beautiful because I think that's how we design our stories as well. Like Swiss Army Man was designed around that opening, a farting corpse, but it's beautiful and cathartic, and he's crying. Okay, can we build a whole house around that chair? And so immediately we kind of clicked in that way, and they were so down. It was such a fun collaboration. We played with every genre. We pulled in people like Andre 3000 is playing the flute on our score, which is amazing. He's throughout, and then Randy Newman came into the session with us for the Rakakuni stuff, which is amazing. So I'm so glad that you noticed the music. It was it's so important to this film because the film is so chaotic. You need the music to kind of pull it all back down and ground it again. So, yeah.
Yeah, a big part of that year-long edit was us trying to fix scenes that tonally weren't working. A lot of it was with sound design and music, and so our sound designers and our composers were part of the whole process for so long, and they composed over 2 hours of original music for the film, because sometimes they'd have to do multiple songs per scene, like overlapping, because Jobu's walking down the hall and a song would overlap with the next song and stuff. It was a hard job.
Well, those of you, we're running out of time here, but those of you who haven't seen this film or have seen it only once, you have to come back and see it again, okay? I trust me, you will see things you did not see the first time.
Did you like it the second time better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I haven't
First
asked her.
time I needed the seatbelt on. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate your attention.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, MoMA. Thank you, Hammer Museum. Thank you, everyone.